Top 10 Things to Do in Kandy, Sri Lanka. The cultural capital of the country, Kandy is set almost slap bang in the center of Sri Lanka and was once home to the island nation's kings and queens of old. As it was only conquered by the British in 1815, the city still proudly showcases its rich history and heritage, with lots of wonderful palaces and temples found around town. While the scenery in and around Kandy is spectacular, the city itself also makes for a fine sight, as beautiful Kandyan architecture lies side by side with colonial-era buildings. 10. St. Paul's Church. Built by the British between 1843 and 1852, St. Paul's Church was once used by the colonial troops Garrison nearby. Somewhat fittingly, its rusty red crenellated tower rises dramatically into the sky, both imposing and impregnable at the same time. It looks more like part of a castle than a church. While its interior is quite austere, there are some delightful scenes of the Bible on the walls, as well as some fine stained glass windows. Neo-Gothic in style, the Garrison Church, as it is often nicknamed, is one of the city's most recognizable remnants of British colonial rule and is located right in the center of town. 9. Royal Palace of Kandy. Now home to the brilliant National Museum of Kandy, the Royal Palace is where the Sinhalese monarchs of times gone by used to reside until the British conquered the kingdom in 1815. Dating to 1634, the palace complex features some magnificent Kandyan architecture, with lots of impressive pavilions, halls, and temples scattered around its grounds. Besides the amazing buildings on show, there are loads of fantastic artifacts and exhibitions for you to peruse that date both to the Kandyan era and colonial times. 8. Viharaya Festival. A phenomenal event to witness, the Festival of the Tooth, as Asala Viharaya is also known, takes place every July or August and is a must-see if you're in town. Over the course of 2 or so weeks, a whole host of processions and parades take place. With lots of astonishing cultural dances and fire performances to check out, as well as parades of elephants dressed in religious garments, Viharaya Festival promises to be unlike anything you've ever seen before. 7. Ceylon Tea Museum. Another of the nation's most important products, the Ceylon Tea Museum takes you on a riveting journey through the history of Sri Lankan tea. Set in the Hanthana Tea Factory, which was built in 1925, the museum has lots of interesting exhibits for you to peruse on the cultivation of tea plants, the machinery and utensils used to harvest them, and famous tea pioneers. After learning all there is to know about the process and history behind it, you can sample some of the country's brews yourself in its charming little tea room. 6. Lankatilaka Temple. Located just half an hour's drive to the southwest of the city, Lankatilaka Temple is home to some utterly brilliant Sinhalese architecture and artworks and is definitely worth checking out if you have the chance. Built atop a natural rock sometime in the 14th century, the temple's sparkling white walls are beautifully embellished and adorned with statues and bas-reliefs. Spanning 3 stories, the splendid Lankatilaka Temple is one of the finest examples of Gampola-era architecture around. 5. Kandy Lake. Lying right at the heart of the city, Kandy Lake is human-made and was created all the way back in 1807 by its then-ruler Sri Wikrama Raja Singh. Surrounded by trees, with the temple of the sacred tooth relic lying on its shores, the lake paints a very pretty picture and is a great place to go for a stroll. Numerous myths and legends swirl around the lake, with a small island at its center said to be connected to the royal palace by way of an underwater tunnel. 4. Sri Maha Bodhi Viharaya. As it is home to one of the largest and most beautiful statues of the Buddha in Sri Lanka, the Sri Maha Bodhi Viharaya Temple is one of Kandy's most popular tourist attractions. Set among the wooded hills that lie just to the west to the city center, the temple's scenic setting makes it the perfect place to go if you want to escape from Kandy's hustle and bustle for a bit. Towering to over 26 meters, the dazzlingly white statue depicts the Buddha in a meditation pose and is the undoubted star of the show. One of the most photographed monuments in Kandy, Bhairavakonda Vihara Buddha statue lies at the top of a long flight of stairs and can be seen poking its head above the surrounding treetops from many points in the city. 3. British Garrison Cemetery. Nestled away on the outskirts of Udawattakele Forest Reserve overlooking Kandy Lake, the British Garrison Cemetery is still caringly tended to this day. Used between 1817 and 1873, it is here that the British dead were buried, with many of the men, women, and children having succumbed to either cholera or malaria. Despite its rather somber atmosphere, the cemetery is set in a very pretty spot and is well worth stopping by for the insight it offers up into the city and country's colonial past. 2. Udawattakele Forest Reserve. Covering the hillside overlooking both the royal palace of Kandy and the temple of the sacred tooth relic, it is in Udawattakele that kings and queens of years gone by used to go for a stroll and immerse themselves in nature. Now a forest reserve, the park is home to lots of wonderful fauna and flora, with a number of lovely paths and trails snaking their way through the dense undergrowth. Besides the brightly colored birds that flock overhead, from time to time, you can also spot pangolins, macaques, and civets hidden away among the foliage. Popular with locals and tourists alike, the delightful nature and stunning scenery on show in Udawattakele Forest Reserve makes it a marvelous place to visit. 1. Temple of the Tooth. One of the most sacred sites in the whole of Sri Lanka, the Temple of the Tooth is home to one of Buddhism's most revered relics, a tooth from the Buddha himself. The resplendent golden-roofed temple is a fitting location for such an important relic. Although you can't actually see it for yourself, the ornate gold casket in which it is enclosed already makes for an impressive sight. The reverent atmosphere makes the temple a special place to visit, and rituals are performed here thrice daily. While the tooth is believed to have been brought to the island in the 3rd century, the gorgeous temple and shrine were built many centuries later. Part of the royal palace, the Temple of the Tooth is the most important and popular site in town and shouldn't be missed out on when exploring Kandy's many delights.